Hi everyone, my name is Rainer. Hi everyone, my name is Rainer, and today I'm here to do a final video about Ashley Hickson-Lovence's novel The 392 that I did as a buddy read together with Ellie from Ellie's Little Library. And yeah, we thought we'd do this in 4 parts. The first part is a short introduction, hopefully short introduction by me. I'm going to talk a little bit about the author, a little bit about the story. Then Ellie is going to dive into the characters of the novel. And then I come back with a bunch of remarks about London. And finally, Ellie is going to deliver a final summary of our read and how what we thought about the novel. Start with the author. Ashley Hickson-Lovence is born in Hackney, which is a pretty famous part in London. He is a secondary school teacher, and he is currently completing his PhD in critical and creative writing at the East Anglia University in Norwich. The 392 is basically, it's a novel about a bus ride from Hoxton to Highbury. The ride takes 36 minutes from Hoxton to Highbury, and the story is told to you, to us, by 11 people, and 10 of them are actually traveling on the bus. People are reflecting about their lives, their current lives, their past, and their dreams of the future. We have 183 pages in my edition and 36 minutes. It's a bus that doesn't exist in reality. In our story, it's a new bus route, and one passenger on board looks suspicious to most of the other passengers. Tension is slowly rising, slowly built up, and there's a breathtaking finale that could happen to each and every one of us who travel public transport. It could happen in Stockholm, in Helsinki, in New York, and everywhere in the world. And the city of London, besides of the 11 characters, the 11 persons telling the story, the city of London is another character. But to introduce you to the characters, we will go to England and meet Ellie.
Hello, so thank you so much for the introduction. I'm going to be talking to you about all the characters within the 392. So each chapter is an individual character. We begin with Natalie, who is a young lady. She's pregnant, and I can't remember whether she's on her way to or coming back from a scan after seeing her baby for the first time. We learn that the father's not involved, and it's kind of a dangerous situation that she is in without her knowing this, but we'll go further through the book and you'll understand it further through the chapters. But yeah, so the perspective that we take is that Natalie is on her phone writing all of this. She wants to write a book, describe her life, that kind of thing. She talks about her childhood, growing up in London, growing up on the estates, what it was like, kind of fight or flight mentality. You can see that when she gets on the bus, she feels that people are judging her. There's some schoolgirls behind her that are laughing and just being generally like teenagers, and she was like, oh, I'm ready to fight these kids if I need to, which obviously given her situation isn't what you'd expect, but it's how she grew up, that kind of thing. So it was interesting to read her chapter. I think we both found it really descriptive. What we also found is that throughout this book there is a lot of mention of sort of gentrification, and so how London became this huge kind of tourist attraction essentially. And interestingly, a very sort of known thing for London is the red buses, and so we kind of discussed, oh, could that be the reason that this book centers around a bus, is because that's what London is known for essentially. So the next character is Ray. He is like a really big football fan, probably more of a football hooligan, is my opinion there, but he was attacked, which left him partially blind, and so he just sort of throughout his chapter he discusses that, his anger towards the person who did it and how it shaped his views moving forward. The next person that we're introduced to is Levi. Now he is a black male, and he is known, he was in the paper at one point for stealing a bag of rice during the London riots, and his story is that he did that to prove to the courts that they are more likely to sort of sentence a black male for a petty crime than they are to sentence a white individual for a more serious crime, which is pretty accurate. And so his sort of chapter discusses how he is trying to move away from that and how he wants to become a barrister and to change the criminal justice system essentially to make it more fair, but also to just do his part. So I really, really enjoyed his chapter. And also the second part of the book that discusses him as well is really, really interesting. You see the struggle that he goes to get to where he is, but also the rewards that he has as well. Next person that we're introduced to is Gloria, and she is an old lady. She has recently lost her husband, and I think this trip is kind of one she typically does every morning. Although he's still gone, she still goes and does the shopping as though he's there. She cooks the same meals that he used to like because she's just trying to preserve his memory, I guess. It is really, really sad, but what I think is incredible about her is the fact that she looks on this bus and she sees all these young people and she sees so much potential in them, and she looks around London, how beautiful and amazing it's becoming. So there's two different perspectives, especially with Natalie and how she views London and how Gloria views it as well, and I think that's really interesting. And throughout this book, as we both discussed, is that the descriptions are so clever, so real, that these people just come to life and you can just imagine them. I don't know, it's just so realistic. The next person we are introduced to is Stu, and I think both of us kind of, I don't know, me more so. I didn't really like Stu's character, but it's kind of, you know, I think Raina said it's one of those things where we're kind of glad that we don't know what people are thinking, essentially. Stu, as we kind of have a definition for him as oversexed, which I don't think is a word, but it describes him perfectly. He gets on the bus and straight away he kind of has the bus driver in sight. He really likes her, takes to her, and he basically sits and thinks about fantasies of her and him, and I don't like it at all. But then he also does speak about how he was quite lonely during like his younger years, and so that probably is why he developed the feelings and thoughts that he has developed. Next we have Diamond, and she has a very ill mother. It seems that she has some kind of illness, we're thinking probably cancer or something like that, and she doesn't know whether she has longer left to live. So she is also caring for her mother and looking after her younger brother. So she's late. She's currently on the way to school. She's late because she had to drop her brother off at school. But it was hard to read her chapter. I think we both thought this because she is so young and yet she has so much responsibility and everything is so uncertain with her mother. You know, your mother is such a big figure in your life, and so to read something like that is kind of, it's incredibly sad, but it's real, it's what happens, and there are children out there that, you know, deal with that sort of thing. She also has an absent father, so it's essentially just her mum, and her younger brother, I believe. But yeah, and then we're introduced to another one of the characters who she sort of has a conversation with, and she sees this guy as a potential father figure. She kind of thinks, oh, would he be a good father to my brother, kind of thing. Just because I feel like she's at the point where she just wants help, she wants support, and she can't do it on her own, which is fair enough, and completely understandable. But she's also incredibly impressionable as well, and so she has a friend who she just wants to be like, she wants to mimic, and she's so conflicted in her own mind, and it's kind of really sad to read it. Another thing that I haven't brought up already, I probably should have said at the beginning, is that there is a gentleman at the front of this bus, and from every character that you hear from has mentioned him at some point. He is carrying this big bag and he has something in his hands. Every single person on the bus thinks that he is a terrorist. Every single person, just by looking at him, just thinks, yeah, he's a terrorist. So there is a lot of tension on the bus just because of this one individual that nobody knows, nobody said anything to. But it's just kind of first glance, that's what they think. So we are then introduced to Boxer, who is your typical lad. That's all I can describe him as, really. He's kind of, the first time we meet him is on the phone as well as talking internally to himself that we hear. And so on the phone he puts up this front like he's so tough and he's ready to fight and things like that, but then he comes off the phone, or we kind of hear from him, and it's just not what he believes in. And interestingly, he is talking to his brother, who is the father of Natalie's child. Yes. And so as the book progresses, he realises that Natalie's at the front. He goes to sit with her, they talk, and then he is in two minds because she's in a really dangerous situation where his brother will do anything to make sure she doesn't have this baby. And I think it's tough for him because he wants to protect her, but at the same time he doesn't want to be disrespectful towards his family. So he has to make a choice. And we see it unfold throughout the book. We're then introduced to Barney, who is a politician. Now, personally, I think he reminds me a lot of Boris Johnson. He just does. But yeah, so he's at the back of the bus and he's with a film crew and he's taking, because this is the first trip the bus has ever taken, so he's doing like a televised thing about it. And he talks a lot about his anxieties and his fears and his stress that he's facing, which makes politicians seem more real. That's what I think. But he also mentions about the gentleman at the front of the bus as well, and how he fears, he could feel the tension on the bus and he fears that, oh, maybe this is the last trip he'll take. Finally, the last character that we hear from is, well, the last character of the first round that we hear from is Dean, and he is a homeless gentleman, and he is taking pictures with a pretend camera that no one else can see. But in his own mind, he is this incredible photographer who's going to make it big one day, who's going to, you know, do better for himself. He's going to get a house. He's going to get away from the alcohol, the drugs, the homelessness. And it's so, so sad, but amazing that he's so, like, determined to do better. But it also proves that, well, shows that society is so quick to judge and not give opportunities to those who are struggling. And so how can someone move on from homelessness or drug addictions if no one is there to sort of support them? And so that was the first round of characters. The second round, we go over all the same characters again. They give more detail about their life and more detail about the situation on the bus, but then we are introduced to the bus driver, who also expresses her concerns about the gentleman who's pretty much right behind her. I'm losing my voice, sorry. And so she tells us how she feels about everything and how she is a female bus driver, and this is the first. She sort of worked her way up through the ranks. She really, really worked hard to sort of be better, and she doesn't want to call in that there is potentially someone dangerous on the bus because it's her first day. She doesn't want men to judge her and think that she's not up for the challenge, kind of thing. So she sort of bites her tongue and just said, no, you know what, I'm just going to deal with it. And so I think I should probably stop there. The final character we're introduced to is, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to ruin it. I don't know if we're doing spoilers. So I will come back to you. And if we are, then obviously I will describe the final character. But if not, then my lips are sealed. So I shall hand back over to Raina and we shall continue this conversation.
Thanks, Ali, for this great summary of the characters in this very character-driven novel, The 392 by Ashley Hickson-Lovence. You mentioned London, red buses and gentrification while talking about all the passengers in this great novel. And I think that London actually might be the main character in this novel. The ever-changing city, the big city, one of the greatest cities in Europe and one of the metropolis of the world. Almost all characters here in this novel reflect about gentrification, or simply they notice that the changes that have been made or are being made to their neighborhood. But number 392, which is not existing in real life, is going from Hoxton to Highbury Corner and travels through East London and Shoreditch. The East End is north of the Thames and east of the city. Let's look for some quotes in the book before I come back a little bit to Hoxton. Natalie is Hackney born and raised, quote, I grew up on the streets, the block, the bits, the estate, the ghetto, the ends, the manor, she says. And riding on the bus, she thinks about Hoxton is changing and she doesn't know if she likes it. Quote, there are lots of important looking people in suits and ties, chatting and smiling and looking out the window at the sights as if Shoreditch is some fancy place in New York. Even Levy sees the influx of hyper-fashionable, quote, millennials, the people who protest about the state of the environment and the academization of local schools and the overdevelopment of the high street, and fears that the heart of this area will disappear. Gloria, who once moved from Ireland to London, has grown old, and she's sad that, quote, "My little Hoxton is getting way too big and busy. I miss how it used to be. The White Horse, Hoxton Hall, the Iceland, that used to be a co-op, Britannia Leisure Centre, Dad's barbershop. The little bits, everything has changed. I feel like a foreigner. It's as if I live in my own old bubble that is shrinking every day, making it harder and harder to breathe." I have been visiting London, I think, since 2006 or 2007. And in 2012, I was for the first time in an area that I think is known as the Elephant and Castle area. And I saw the great Haygate estate with 4,000 apartments and flats stand there like a ghost town waiting to get demolished. I went there almost year after year after year. And now new skyscrapers are being developed and built with apartments that cost 890,000 British pounds. Each time when I visited London, I was drawn to the Elephant. I liked and enjoyed the diversity that was, or still is, to be seen there by all the people from African and Caribbean countries, but also from South America, Latinx countries, and especially the people from Colombia, I guess. The Coronet Theatre, which is a blue building just beside the Elephant and Castle shopping centre, where Charlie Chaplin performed when he was very young, where bands like Oasis have played, Justin Timberlake, Alicia Keys have played there. It's closed for demolition in 2019. I still don't know if it still stands there today. The shopping center, a relic of old times, with that beautiful Colombian restaurant La Bodeguita on the upper floor, everything bound for demolition from 2020 onwards for new shops, high fancy shops, posh apartments, and so on and so on. But back to Hoxton. I found an article in The Guardian where The Guardian has called it the ground zero for gentrification in London in a 2018 article. There's actually a photograph called A Great Day in Hoxton by photographer Peter Williams from 1998, which captured the typical Hoxton people of 1998. Students, artists, musicians, lots of people who work in areas where you don't make so much money, actors, dancers, and so on. 20 years later, The Guardian is writing, and I quote, "Indeed, visit Hoxton Square today and you'll see almost no resemblance to the one in the photo. Instead of scruffy musicians and artists, it's full of young professionals wearing office ID lanyards around their necks. In 2016, the property from Knight Frank reported that Shoreditch office rents had risen by 24% the previous year, and by 2017, Shoreditch had become the world's most expensive tech and creative district, with rents averaging £64.60, that's $90.75 per square feet, higher than the mid-markets district of San Francisco and almost double those in an equivalent area of Brooklyn, New York." This is what Ashley Hickson-Lovence is also talking about in his debut novel of 392. But as Ellie said, we think the characters are very much developed. You can almost see them come to life in this book. It's a well-crafted debut. It's a very exciting story, a very thrilling story, because you don't know how it ends, right? And we can look forward to Ashley Hickson-Lovence's second novel, which I have heard and I have read on the internet will have more about football in it. Well, for some final words back to you, Ellie. I really enjoyed doing this buddy read with you. It was fun to do the video. Subscribe to Ellie's channel, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. And see you soon.
Thank you so much for that insight. That was incredible. Some of those things I didn't even know. And to say that I live in the UK, I don't know much about London's history, and I found it so interesting. So thank you so much for that. I think within the book, obviously, it touches on a lot of different topics that are so real and continue throughout history, really. But I think the book really got me thinking about my own perceptions on people, and how it's no secret that every single individual is quick to judge. You look at someone and straight away you have your own kind of opinion on them. And I think when you kind of understand everybody else's perceptions and realize that maybe if you look at someone in a way that you think, oh, they're not great, and then everyone else kind of follows suit and everyone thinks the same thing, you kind of immediately label that person as a bad person, whereas we know nothing about them. But we are more than happy to, because everyone else believes it, to just be like, nope, they're a terrible person. So throughout the entire book, I think everyone who reads it kind of has this, ooh, which way could it go? Could it be a good person? Could it be a bad person? And I think that is interesting. I think to have, like, trick a reader essentially into thinking that is pretty interesting. And I really enjoyed it on that level. And then the end made me sit for a while and think, although, you know, you can't change your perceptions overnight. It's kind of one of those things you have to do throughout your life to not judge people straight away, kind of the whole don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. But just a reminder that it's essential to, you know, really think before you judge an individual, really. So I think the book was amazing for that, and obviously the other issues that it brought up as well. It was a fantastic read, and I really appreciate being able to do it with you. I appreciate having gone through the experience with you. It was great. I enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you as well. So thank you so much for doing this buddy read with me. I know this video took a very, very long time, so for that I do apologise, but I have really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope this kind of spurs you on to read the book if you haven't already. If you have read it, then please let us know what you think down in the comments section. It'd be great to hear from you. So thank you very much, and goodbye.